Catherine, Emilia's voice sliced through the marble silence of the Andres estate. You missed a spot. No one breathed. Everyone knew what came next. Except this time, the maid didn't lower her eyes. Welcome back to Whisper Realm. Here is another story that will captivate you. Hit the like button, subscribe, and comment where you are watching from. Let's make the video to go viral together. Now let's dive in. The marble floors of the Andres estate gleamed like mirrors, reflecting chandeliers that hung like captured stars. Every surface shimmered with wealth, so absolute it felt like law. At its center ruled Emilia Davenport, soon-to-be wife of billionaire William Andres, a woman whose beauty silenced guests and whose temper froze her staff. To serve her was to walk a tightrope of fear polished to perfection. Catherine, Emilia's voice rang out, sharp as cut crystal. The young maid froze, cloth trembling in her dark hands. A faint streak of wax marred the banister, an unforgivable flaw. You missed a spot, Emilia murmured, descending the stairs. Each stiletto click echoed like a countdown. Do you know what William says about me? She leaned close enough for her perfume to sting. He says I'm flawless. I suggest you keep it that way. The room held its breath. No one dare move. Then Catherine lifted her eyes, steady, calm, unafraid. Their gazes met in the reflection of the polished rail, and for the first time, Emilia flinched. In that quiet defiance, the balance of power cracked. The household's unspoken rule, survived by silence, had just been broken by silence itself. That evening, as the city burned gold beyond the windows, Emilia's laughter floated through the drawing room, bright and brittle. From the shadows, Catherine polished silver that could pay a family's future, her face unreadable. Beneath her stillness, something stirred, a storm built from memory, pride, and the knowledge that dignity, once awakened, never sleeps. Tomorrow, they would both pretend nothing had changed. But the mansion already knew better. That night, when the laughter in the drawing room faded to a distant hum, Catherine climbed the narrow servants' stairs to her attic room. The air smelled faintly of polish and rain. She caught her reflection in the small, cracked mirror, tired eyes, a faint mark still reddening on her cheek. The sting reminded her that humiliation was never free. It always left its receipt on the skin. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed, the city's gold light spilling through the window in fractured lines. For a long moment, she said nothing. Silence had become her only luxury, something no one could take, no matter how rich they were. Once, people had stood when she entered a room. Professor Catherine Richard, they'd called her, with respect in their voices and admiration in their eyes. She could still hear the lecture halls, still feel the chalk dust on her fingers. Then came the accusation, a wealthy donor's son she'd refused to protect after he falsified research. His family called her vindictive. The university called it unfortunate. Her career ended with a single whispered rumor. She remembered the day she sold her books to afford the bus north, how her mother's voice on the phone broke when she said, "I'll be fine." Now, she cleaned the floors of people who believed intellect came in shades of privilege. Yet, even here, her mind stayed sharp, her spirit unbroken. Catherine looked toward the moonlit city and whispered, "If silence is my only weapon, then silence will be enough." By Friday morning, the Andres estate pulsed with the fever of preparation. Florists filled the halls with imported orchids. Chefs argued over menus worth more than salaries, and the press lingered at the gates like crows waiting for a spectacle. It was the weekend of Emilia Davenport's engagement, a celebration of power disguised as love. Catherine moved quietly through the chaos, polishing glassware until it gleamed like ice. Emilia had reassigned her to personal service, claiming it was an honor. In truth, it was punishment. Grace can't be bought, Catherine, Emilia murmured that afternoon as she tried on her ivory gown, eyes fixed on her reflection. But you could at least try to look like you belong. The insult landed soft but sharp. Catherine only nodded, fastening the final button. She had learned that silence could wound deeper than defense. Around her, the house buzzed with flattery and fear. Servants whispered, guests rehearsed admiration, and William Andres moved through it all with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Catherine noticed. She noticed everything. The tremor in Amelia's hands when she thought no one watched. The way William's gaze drifted through her as though she were already fading. Beneath the glittering surface, something fragile was fracturing. When night fell, Amelia's laughter echoed once more through the halls, high and hollow. Catherine paused in the corridor, cloth in hand, listening. Even glass, she thought, can crack under too much light. The mansion slept beneath a hush of luxury, chandeliers dimmed to a golden ghost light. Catherine carried a stack of fresh towels toward William Andres's private study, the only room still faintly lit. She meant to leave them at the door, but something inside drew her gaze, a single lamp burning above his mahogany desk, and the faint hum of an open laptop. On the screen, an email subject line glowed like a warning. Amelia Davenport, background findings. Curiosity warred with caution. She should turn away, yet her feet didn't move. A few lines of text were enough to make her blood run cold. Forged degrees, offshore accounts, embezzlement, blackmail. The words formed cracks in the porcelain image Amelia had built, revealing rot beneath the shine. Catherine's breath caught. She looked around the empty room, feeling the weight of secrets not hers to hold. The billionaire's fiancée, so flawless, so feared, was living a lie, and William knew it. But if he hadn't acted yet, why? Her fingers itched to close the laptop, to erase what she'd seen, but truth once glimpsed cannot be unseen. She stood there for a long moment, pulse steady, thoughts sharp. To speak would mean suspicion, dismissal, maybe ruin again. To stay silent might mean watching another empire collapse. Catherine turned toward the dark corridor, whispering to herself. Truth is a loaded weapon. The question is who will pull the trigger first. Morning light spilled through the glass corridors, painting the marble floors in quiet gold. The calm shattered with Amelia's scream. Her diamond choker, worth $500,000 and pride beyond price, had vanished from her dressing table. Within minutes, the entire staff stood lined up in the grand foyer, eyes lowered, breaths held. Someone will confess, Amelia hissed, her voice trembling with fury, or everyone will pay. Her gaze landed on Catherine. You, she said, stalking closer. You've been in my room all week. I have, ma'am, Catherine answered, voice even. Then admit it. I have nothing to admit. The sound of the slap cracked through the air, sharp, shocking. Catherine's head jerked sideways, a thin line of blood marking her cheek where Amelia's diamond ring had caught skin. No one moved. The heavy doors swung open. William Andres entered, drawn by the noise. His gaze swept the room, taking in the trembling staff, the blood on Catherine's face, the fury blazing in Amelia's eyes. She stole my necklace, Amelia cried. William's expression was unreadable. Search her room, he said quietly. Minutes later, the butler returned pale and shaking. Nothing, sir. Silence fell like dust. Amelia's anger flickered, something fragile creeping through. Fear. William said nothing, his eyes lingering too long on Catherine's calm, unbroken stance. As the crowd dispersed, Catherine remained still, the blood drying on her cheek, watching the woman who had struck her tremble for the first time. The morning of the engagement dinner dawned bright and brittle. The Andres estate hummed with rehearsed joy, but beneath the perfume and champagne polish, tension coiled like wire. Amelia Davenport stood before her mirror, applying lipstick with trembling precision. Perfect, she whispered to her reflection, but the word fell hollow. The diamond choker, now miraculously replaced, hung heavy around her throat, as if mocking her. Every sound in the corridor made her flinch. Downstairs, William discussed final arrangements with the event planner, his tone clipped, polite, distant. When Amelia entered, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She noticed. Everyone did. Servants exchanged looks when they thought she wasn't watching. Whispers slithered through the halls about the slap, the search, the missing necklace. Catherine remained silent through all, her face composed, her work precise. She neither defended herself nor looked for sympathy. That quiet composure began to command more respect than Amelia's practiced charm ever had. By afternoon, Amelia's laughter came too loudly, her compliments too sharp-edged. Even the air around her felt brittle, ready to break. Upstairs, Catherine paused outside the ballroom, watching florists arrange roses worth fortunes. Somewhere within that glittering chaos, Justice waited, patient and still. As the first guests arrived, cameras flashed at the gates, capturing the spectacle of wealth. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter rose, and the mask of perfection settled once more, cracking at the edges, one smile away from shattering. By the time dinner was served, the room shimmered with candlelight and calculated grace. William stood at the head of the long oak table, glass in hand, his expression unreadable. To truth and gratitude, he began, his voice carrying effortlessly over the soft hum of conversation. And to someone who returned something valuable, a ripple of confusion spread. Amelia's practiced smile wavered, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. William's gaze found her, steady and unflinching. The missing diamond, he said evenly, was discovered among shipments from your charity, alongside records of offshore transfers. The air thickened. Forks paused midair. Murmurs surged like a rising tide. Amelia's face drained of color, the gleam in her eyes turning brittle. "That's absurd," she whispered, but her voice trembled. Reporters moved like vultures, flashes igniting every corner of the room. William didn't raise his tone. He didn't need to. His calm precision was indictment enough. Behind him, Catherine stood silent, the faint mark of her earlier slap still visible against her skin. She did not gloat. She simply watched as the truth, long buried beneath diamonds and deceit, finally surfaced. And as Amelia's facade shattered, the laughter for moments before echoed hollow in the Golden Hall. Security moved swiftly, their dark suits slicing through the sea of stunned faces. Amelia's protest dissolved into flashes of light and shouted questions as she was led toward the courtyard. The night air bit at her bare shoulders, a cruel reminder of how quickly warmth could vanish. Cameras followed, hungry for her ruin. "You think this makes you better than me?" she spat, her voice trembling between rage and despair. Her heels scraped against the marble, her dignity unraveling thread by thread. Catherine stood a few steps away, her expression unreadable in the dim glow of the chandeliers spilling through the open doors. She said nothing. Instead, she lifted her hand and slowly opened her palm. Resting there was the crumpled napkin Amelia had used at dinner, now marked with a faint smear of red, the blood from Catherine's earlier slap. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Amelia stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. The reflection in Catherine's eyes was no longer an adversary. It was a mirror, showing her everything she'd buried beneath ambition and deceit. Her shoulders shook. The tears came then, not from pain, but from the hollow echo of self-recognition. The empire she'd built on charm and control had finally collapsed, not by force, but by truth. Catherine turned away in silence, her heels clicking softly against the stone. The woman who said nothing had destroyed an empire of lies. Morning broke over headlines that screamed across the city. Billionaire's fiancée exposed for fraud and theft. The glossy world Amelia had built turned to dust overnight. Photos of her diamond-strewn smile, now symbols of deceit. William issued a statement before noon, calm and final. The engagement was canceled. By evening, legal teams circled, and for the first time in years, the estate was silent. Catherine was summoned to his study. The air smelled faintly of smoke from the extinguished fireplace. William looked older, humbled. "You saw what I refused to," he said quietly, sliding an envelope across the desk. Inside lay a letter of recommendation, an open door to the academic life she had lost. Catherine studied it for a long moment before pushing it gently back. "I only wanted to be seen," she said, her voice steady. Months later, she passed the estate gates on her way to the university, sunlight catching in her hair. Workers tending the gardens paused, whispering the story that had already become legend. The maid who made the fiancé cry, without saying a word. Behind the tall, iron fences, the mansion loomed empty yet cleansed, its ghost quiet at last. Catherine didn't look back. In the hush that followed her footsteps, a truth lingered, one no scandal or headline could touch. Silence, after all, can roar louder than power. Thank you for staying to the very end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comment section. See you in the next one.